welcome. Woohoo! I'm so happy that you're here. This is the You Can with Suzanne show, and that would be me. I'm Suzanne, because if Sue can, you can too. Welcome. And we're here every Thursday in Buffalo and Lockport, and every Saturday as well in Buffalo, so woohoo, yeah. Now, we are 3/4 of the way through October. Time is going by so quickly. There's pink and there's purple going on this month. Pink for breast cancer awareness, which everybody is very familiar with. But what about purple? Purple is domestic violence awareness, and this is also the month for that. And as you may or may not know, I am a survivor of a 22-year very toxic relationship. And here I am, and I got my own show, and I am here living by example. And so today, I have some super mega awesome friends of mine who, guess what? They have some similar stories. Now, the whole purpose of this show is to inspire you and say that, gosh, you know what? I am not alone. If she can do it, I can do it too. For whatever it is, whatever you set your mind to, gosh darn it, yeah, you can do that. Don't let anybody tell you no. So we have some wonderful ladies with wonderful stories, so I'm going to get to it right now. You get no story today, but you're going to get 3 stories, not from me. So here we go. I'd like to welcome Jessica. Hi, Jess!
Hey.
And that's this. I'm not going to call you Robin. And Heather and Robin. And we all have something in common. And it's like not cool and not fun, but we're all here smiling today because we're awesome today and we overcame this stuff. So let's see, where should we begin? Begin. We're going to begin. We're going to start now. Do you want to go first?
Okay, where are we starting?
So, just briefly, let's see. How long have you been out of your violent relationship?
5 years on June 6th. I celebrated that in the media. I did like a super special where I went back to that specific place, the apartment that we used to live in, went and stood in the spot where I used to park my car and then did warrior pose.
Oh yeah. And now, how long were you in that relationship for?
I want to say pretty much my entire pregnancy and then a little bit before and a little bit after.
Wow. Now, was it a subtle thing?
No.
It wasn't subtle? It wasn't a gradual overtaking?
No. I was just in a really bad place in my life, and for some reason, I didn't, maybe it's through, a little bit of laziness, I just didn't want to do anything else. I wanted to just be in a happy relationship and, that be that. And then, I wanted this relationship to work. This is the relationship I'm putting my time into. We're going to have this. We're going to work.
And we're going to be happy, darn it.
Yeah.
So what happened, when it wasn't? Were you still, fighting to keep what it was, even though it wasn't healthy?
I'm going back, in the actual relationship, I thought that I was in an actual relationship, but I look back and it's hindsight 2020 that I was not happy ever. I was never in love. I'm barely even like the guy. It was mostly I was in a bad place and I felt like I ostracized myself from my friends and family. I was going through another bad breakup, and then my abuser ended up being my rebound. So
gotcha.
I kind of met my abuser, and then 3 days in was the first time that he started really being super jealous, and then a couple days later was the first time he ever choked me. And
oh my gosh, that's pretty quick.
yeah, it was when everybody always says they went into this relationship and then they went through the honeymoon phase and they were in love. I never had that. I just was so bad with my own self-esteem and self-confidence that I let myself be in a relationship that was abusive from the very first start.
Mm-hmm. So when he choked you only in less than a week's time, were there alarms going off in your head oh my God, I got to do something, or did you dismiss it?
I dismissed it. It was the first time I'd ever really been choked like that, where I was physically being choked, but then you can also tell in that instance that he was just doing it to scare me and he wasn't actually trying to kill me. Mm-hmm. And then he apologized for it, and then he did the knight in shining armor response where he just apologized, it'll never happen again, and then I had all of the responses that I wanted him to do from that point on. So it was more him playing on my fantasy life.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thank you. You're next.
You're right.
Okay, Heather. So, your relationship, was it sudden? Was it a quick onset like Jessica's, or was it a gradual thing?
Well, there was a lot that really played into it. I had 2 very bad relationships. I had been in a marriage for about 13 years, and trying to get out of that, I met my second abuser. So my first was a very volatile relationship that took a good 6 years to get out, the divorce finalized. While that was going on, I met my knight in shining armor, and while I didn't feel that love like Jess was talking about with my first relationship, I felt it for my second big relationship. And he really took advantage of a lot of the struggles I was going through.
So
Trying
you were
to get out of
vulnerable at that time.
I was very vulnerable, and I wasn't familiar with the cycle or gaslighting or control or manipulation, how to get out of that. I had felt a lot of control and manipulation in my previous relationship, which forced me to try and look for paths out. But I wasn't knowledgeable that I was so vulnerable, and that was a weakness that I was allowing somebody else to come in and control me with.
Right.
So,
why would we be? It's not like we're going to go out and study.
And you don't expect guys to just treat you that way as a norm. I mean, I've been in other relationships with great guys who I'm still friends with, but that relationship ended on May 16th, and he strangled me, and that was, I want to say it officially ended then. We had been on and off for quite a long time. But yeah, it was that day he ended up assaulting me and strangling me, got arrested, and I got a stay away order that provided me the opportunity to finally have an end to the relationship. And I mean, ironically, I tried going to get an order stay away prior, but I didn't have enough evidence to show because it was all about manipulation and control. And you don't have, that proof, basically, tangible proof to really bring to...
Yeah, because that's not something that you can see. Like, I have a bruise here, you can see that. I have a handprint or a choke mark, you can see that.
Right.
But you can't see that, so it's so hard to prove.
And
that's a really important point.
Yep.
Thank you. Now, Robin has a different perspective, Robin has a different story, and it's equally as important, and I need Robin to share her story with us. So, I don't know where you want to start, but yours was not with a date. This was right within your own family.
Yeah, I guess I would start from the beginning and just be really brief, but it turns out that my family has a 2-generation cycle of domestic violence, including sexual assault and rape, and I was the 2nd generation. And I was the one to break this cycle. My aunt also broke the cycle too in generation 1. But out of all of the brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, family members, we're the only 2 that ever did anything about it. So I guess for my part, it's complicated because there's domestic violence from my grandparents, which were generation 1. Then there was domestic violence from my mother, who was affected by my grandparents, and that was separate from the domestic violence from my mother and my stepfather. So I don't even know how many cycles to call it.
Too many.
Yeah, they just kind of all mesh together. But let's see, I don't know how in depth I should go about it.
Do you have any pleasant memories as a child growing up?
The most pleasant memory that I have as a child growing up is we used to live out in the middle of the country, and there was a huge field of sunflowers with hummingbirds. And that's the only good memory that I have.
And is that where you would go to get away from everything that was going on?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so I got chills all over the place. All right, so I'd like to fast forward now to what was the breaking point? When did you realize, you know what, this isn't right, and now I want to change it? What happened? Was there like one something?
There's a couple different, but the one specific that I zoned in on after thinking about it was after my son was born, and my ex, I guess, could kind of feel that I was pulling away, which was our general cycle. We were about to go through our big explosion, and he kind of like yanked my newborn out of my hands, put the baby like down really abruptly down into like the vibrating seat that was like backwards, whatever, pushed it really hard over by the balcony window, threw me down on the couch, and then just like jumped on me while the baby's screaming, and then he's like holding me down, yelling at me, telling me that if I leave, this noise that I'm hearing the baby do right now, it's going to happen all the time, every single time he sees the baby, just because I left.
Wow.
And that was like, like the baby's crying because of you. Look at what you did. This is this is your child's life right now. It's never going to leave this point right here if you leave me. And I'm just like that was terrifying.
Yeah, that is total like freeze.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa, my gosh. So between that, when were you just like, I got to do something?
Well,
then that's just like one little thing, because when you get in your mind, I got to do something, until the time you do it, and there's a whole bunch of steps in between, but we only have so much time.
well, it kind of turns into like the chess match in your head. You're like, okay, like I don't want to get hurt, and I don't want my son to get hurt. If my son gets hurt, everything changes. I'm like, that's not going to happen. And then so we ended up breaking up, and I went to live with my mom, but then my mom and me don't have a necessarily relationship that we can live together in close proximity.
Did he stalk you when you left and lived with your mom?
He sent CPS after me. He sent SPCA. It was like any government agency he could send towards my mom's house, he sent towards me.
Did you say the SPCA?
My mom has dogs.
Wow. Just checking.
Yeah. So I lived with her about 2 months, and then we had our explosion, and then I went back to live with my ex, and like this was it. I'm like, okay, this is either going to work or it's not going to work. And I gave him his, like, throughout our entire relationship, I was researching him and forming hypotheses and going all scientific on my domestic violence cycle. So I had it down to he could go 14 days between each explosion. And it was getting faster and faster, and the explosions were getting bigger and bigger, so it was getting to the point where I couldn't really handle when the explosions were happening. So the 14th day of us, we were together, and he went downstairs because he lived in the apartment above from his mom. Red flag.
Yeah.
So he went downstairs, and it was also June 6, 2012, and I had lost somebody very close to me on June 6, 2006. So every June 6, I do something special for myself, even if that means leaving somebody that's toxic. So it was June 6. We were actually on the 15th day, and I knew this was it. And every single time he would attack me, he would take glasses, food stamp card, keys, just anything that I could need to leave. So I threw my phone in my bra, and he came upstairs, he was getting all crazy, getting in my face, and then he took all those things but didn't notice that he didn't take my phone. So then after a bunch of different shoving around and headbutting and random things, the baby's crying because he jumped on the baby while I was trying to feed him, and I hightailed it to the bathroom, got inside the bathroom, called the CPS worker that he sent after me. I had her text message, so I'm like, I'm in the bathroom, I'm being held hostage, he's trying to kill me, she's trying to knock the wood down the door, and I'm gonna go to the safe house tonight. So I contacted a bunch of different people, and it ended up with him going and getting arrested. But in that 2 months when I was living with my mom, he had raped another girl.
Wow.
And then had charges out for him there. So he went to jail then for holding me hostage and that whole thing.
Wow.
And he now has 12 kids.
Oh my goodness.
5 with the wife, I think. 5 or 6 with the wife he conned into marrying him.
Whew. Wow.
Yeah. Dodged a bullet.
Wow. Okay. Process.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, now Heather's story. Okay, got it back. Now, so what was the pivotal point for you? When were you like, enough and I got to do something, and how easy was it for you to actually do something?
It wasn't easy. Actually, for my first relationship, we got together in high school, when I was in high school, and there were red flags here and there. I actually decided to go to Syracuse. I went to school to try to get away from the area, away from the situation, and he just followed me out there. He actually became great friends with my father, and he would come out, visit me, even when I didn't want him to, and eventually it wound up to me coming back to the area. So fast forward, there was a lot of red flags, and I was trying to get out of the situation, but I didn't have that support to get out of it, and I didn't have the resources to get out of it. And there were many things where it came to a head, and right down to the point where I even tried, he had hurt my son, and I tried calling the county for help, And when officers came out, I tried slipping an officer a note saying, help me. They had separated each of us, and they were interviewing each of us. And the officer turned around and said, well, there's days where I just want to throw my own kids through a wall. And my son thankfully didn't have any marks on him. I think a small bump showed later on. So he wasn't hit very hard, but nonetheless he was hit. And it was more of just that pivotal point upon everything else, where it was the first time he started hurting my son instead of just me.
And that's when you said enough.
I'd been trying, but that's when I had the motivation to say, okay, I'm done. But he came back in his hand, my ex, with the note in his hand, and that note never got to the officer. So there was a lot of effort I tried in getting out of that relationship. When I finally did, I got into the next relationship, and he was my knight in shining armor. But I confided in him a lot of things that had happened in my previous relationship. And I began to see that he was utilizing those tactics against me. And thankfully I could see some of those, but there were situations, and fast forward a couple of years, I should have gotten out of the relationship sooner, but he was very persistent. And I think that's something that a lot of victims face is the persistence of their abuser.
Right.
So yeah, there were definitely red flags, but for the life of me, I could not separate myself from him. We owned a business together, and so in some regards, I was reliant on him, and he knew that. So it wasn't until he quit the business and then decided to come back and this and that. And then I started really seeing the tactics he was using, and he was saying that, it was nuts to other people.
Yeah.
He was all sorts of, utilized disinformation and gaslighting. And it was at that point where I knew I had to get out. But again, his persistence in not showing any of the physical signs of hurting me, I didn't really feel like I had anywhere to go. But I would have to say that he reported me missing, and that became a huge ordeal because I wasn't missing. He utilized a lot of resources, and he had been told not to send out a press release by the local police department. He did anyways, and I had been confiding in with the police department prior to that, so they kind of knew what was going on. Of course, they didn't have that full evidence to do anything with it. I found a tracking app on my phone, so he had been stalking me. He knew my texts. When I hard reset my phone, that's when I discovered him more controlling, more manipulative.
Wow. And
it was because he couldn't tell where I was, what I was doing. And finally, when I decided to leave the situation in him, he reported me missing. I had been in Rochester and Syracuse, actually, finding out my credits for school to try to see how I could go back and get my degree, ironically. So fast forward, after that, I still couldn't get him out of my life. I would block him from text, but he always found a way in to talking with me.
So what was your final break?
My final break came when we were going to cover a article in Rochester, a story in Rochester. He had started his own news company. I still had my news company going, the one that we had owned together prior. And we were going to do a nice mutual story and just kind of, break things off, or so I was told. So that's, so I was led to believe. But instead, he took it as an opportunity to try to get back in my life and try to do other things that I wasn't willing to do. And it resulted in him strangling me. And then that led to his arrest and the breakaway, or the stay away.
And that was the
final. And so, after that, I found my happiness again. I discovered who I was again. So, yeah.
Wow, that's pretty heavy. Now, Robin, was there a point in your mind, I'm guessing closer to when you were maybe 20, that
it was about
you
when I
were
was
able
older.
to go in hindsight and say, wait a minute, this isn't normal. What the heck?
Yeah, there was a few points. I guess one of the biggest points will be 2 years ago, this 28th, when I actually spoke with Jessica, and I asked her, is this normal, what my stepdad, was doing to me. He was, molesting me, and he sexually assaulted me. And, she was like, that's molestation. He shouldn't be doing that. It's not normal at all. And and that's when I had actually realized what had been going on the entire time, because when you grow up in domestic violence, it's really hard to understand the difference between not domestic violence and domestic violence, I guess.
Right. When you grow up in that,
It's
you
just
don't.
what
That,
you know.
that is what normal is to you. So
Right.
you don't know what healthy looks like, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you talked to Jessica.
Yeah,
and
so I began questioning, and I talked to Jessica, and I spoke with a few other people and stuff, and that's when I started to try to push my mom and my stepfather out of my life. And then I ended up living with them against my will after the father of my son and I split. And that's when more red flags went off, because they took away my phone. The only thing I had was
your mother and your stepfather.
Yeah, my mother and my stepfather. They took my phone. They wouldn't let me leave the house.
And how old were you at this point?
I was 25.
Wow.
Or something.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like, and I kept on saying, I was like, I'm an adult with a child. I was like, what do you mean I can't leave the house?
Mm-hmm.
But, they would literally barricade the door. Jessica actually tried to take me to a safe house during this, because I still had a computer and I could still communicate that way. And that's the only way that I could communicate. But they barricaded the door. Like, my stepdad would sleep on the couch in order to make sure that I wouldn't get any crazy ideas, as he put them.
Like, how dare you
I
go
know.
outside,
Right.
out there.
Exactly. Like, if I went outside, that was always a big deal. But they stopped me that night, and they're like, you're going to lose custody of your son. I was like, actually, this is the best way for me to keep custody of my son. This is what was recommended by the lawyer that you guys forced me to have for
Wow.
the custody battle. And my stepdad would just not back away from the door. So I had to tell Jessica that it wasn't going to work, because I didn't know what else to do. I should have called the police, but I didn't really have a way to call the police.
So how did you get out of that situation?
Oddly enough, my mom and my stepfather started having problems where they were arguing, and then my mom started to blame me for the domestic violence that was going on in their marriage, and then she kicked me out.
Wahoo!
Yeah.
Wow. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
So I ended up getting another apartment where I still live, and that's when they had the last time, where I had like one of those moments of realization. My mother had said to me, "You were the shame of the family." And I knew immediately that wasn't true. And I just threw it right back at her. I was like, "You're deflecting this on me, and you and your husband are the shame of the family." I was like, "You have it all wrong. I can understand from a psychological standpoint as to why you're going to try and put the shame on me, but I am not the shame, because I told the truth, and you decided to lie."
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. So because we're down to just a few minutes time, so let's get to the happy ending. So we talked about the end of that chapter. So what are you ladies doing today, and are you doing anything that has to do with domestic violence? Jessica?
I graduate at the end of this semester in December with my master's.
Woo!
And then I start my PhD. I started a publishing company, so I published children's books, Imagine We, LLC. And I kind of left DV a little bit behind me because it was like pulling me back with triggers. But then I do things like this. I pick and choose the specific things that I would like to put my energy into, and then I feel a lot more balanced, and I'm way happier. Like, I go through every single day smiling, like, all the time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Heather?
I own an art gallery now, and
Ooh.
yeah.
Now, are you an artist?
I am. I'm a photographer. Actually, I'm a photographer because of my ex-husband. It gave me the opportunity to get out and have jobs and get out of the situation I was in.
And be
Gave
independent.
me an excuse to get out of the house, basically. But yes, I'm a artist, I guess you would say. And
What's the name of the gallery?
Art247.
All right.
So www.theart247.com. And I run a business. I've got another web design business, and then I do other hobbies that my life is full and happy.
The Great Pretender.
Yeah, we've got this cute little joke. There was a series back in the 90s, The Pretender, who could basically I don't know, you take over. Pick on.
We only have a couple minutes, though.
He could
Okay.
be anything he wanted in the smallest amount of time, so he would do everything he possibly could.
Yeah.
And that's her. Now I'm just like the assistant because I try to do that.
Yeah. But yeah, as far as the gallery goes, we do a yearly domestic violence awareness exhibit, Voices of DV, which we allow anyone who's been affected by it to submit work. And we also work doing a contest with Lockport City School students with the Lockport City Police Department.
And that's in 2 days from now, this Saturday.
Yes, yep, we're going to have a reception, so everyone's
Sweet.
welcome to come down and see.
Great. Okay. And Robin, how are you making out today? What are you doing with yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. Kai and I.
Because your road to
have never been
recovery is a
happier.
bit shorter.
It is a bit
than the other
shorter,
ladies.
but I'm surprised in how far I have come in the short amount of time. Kai and I are, away from my family and away from the abusers. I am now back in school, and I could graduate in 1 year with a biochemical psychology bachelor's of science
Oh
degree.
my goodness.
And
Say
then-
that even once fast.
I know. And then I was thinking about going on to a PharmD after that.
Wow. Wow.
And then I also speak out about domestic violence in Brittany's Law at the church that's down the street from my house, where they hold the neighborhood watch meetings. I also am illustrating a book with Jessica that she wrote,
Wonderful.
which is
All right. Well, we have to wrap it up. We're down to about our last minute or so. So my name is Suzanne, and this has been a fantastic informational episode that I hope that you've gotten something out of. Thank you to Jessica and Heather and Robin. And I too am a survivor, 22 years. And you like this necklace right here? Oops, I touched my mic, sorry. Yeah, so I make these necklaces, and you can get your own at goodforthespirit.com. It's the number 4. So that's it, we're out of time. If you are in trouble, call 911. We are not an ambulance or an emergency service, but we are definitely here to lend an ear. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again next week. Bye, everybody.